What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pitching Ninja's filthiest pitches of the day. Remember, before we get to those pitches, hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode of the biggest and best daily baseball show on YouTube. And now, without further ado, here are my filthiest pitches of the day. I'm going to start with Luis Severino, and Sevy season is back. Baseball is better with Luis Severino in it. He had 5 Ks in 4 2/3 innings, keeping it 75 pitches for the game. He flashed a dominant fastball, touching 99, and also had his wicked sliders and nasty changeup. And here's an overlay of a 96-mile-an-hour fastball and an 87-mile-an-hour changeup, and you can see how well those pitches work together. He faced Hunter Greene, who was very good. With 10 Ks in 7 innings, he did give up 2 home runs, but he dominated with his fastballs, sliders, and changeups, and his 10th K was on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball on his 106th pitch. Here are a couple of overlays of Greene's fastball and slider, and you can see why Greene can dominate with those 2 pitches. They tunnel really well, and that slider really drops out of the plane of the fastball just as you're ready to swing. An excellent pitching matchup to start your Sunday morning, and it was the subject of my segment on Peacock TV before the game.
We get a treat today, Ninja. Luis Severino for the Yankees making his debut on MLB Sunday Leadoff. What do you think about him?
I am fired up to see Sevy back pitching. I mean, there's very few pitchers that excite me more than Sevy when he's on, and it is so cool to have Sevy's season back. In case y'all forgot, he throws heat. It's a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He also has a wicked slider that he tunnels really well with that fastball. It's about a 42% whiff rate on that slider. And if you think you're getting a fastball and you get that slider, well, you're out of luck. He also has a filthy changeup and cutter. But the thing that jumps out to me is his veteran and emotional leadership. I mean, look at this dude. Who needs coffee on a Sunday morning when you have a fired-up Sevy to give you all this energy? Let's go.
Dean Kramer had 7 Ks in 5 1/3 innings, giving up 1 run, thanks to his fastballs and cutter, and he faced Kevin Gausman, who had 4 Ks in 8 innings, giving up 2 runs, and had his overpowering fastball and wicked splitter. Josiah Gray had 2 Ks in 5 innings, he gave up 6 walks, and had a tough time with command. And he featured a bunch of wrong-way sliders and cutters. Look at this slider. This thing broke 8 inches arm side. Gray has perfected the backup slider, and these cutters moved an inch or 2 arm side. This can happen when you have a lot of gyro spin on your slider and cutter, and depending on your release, the ball could go either way. Andrew Heaney had 5 Ks in 6 innings, giving up no earned runs, and had this changeup and slider. Carlos Hernandez had this overpowering 100-mile-an-hour fastball and these wicked sliders, and had 3 Ks in 2 scoreless innings as the opener. He battled Lance Lynn, who had 6 Ks in 6 innings, giving up 2 runs and 4 hits, and had these fastballs, curveballs, and K dances, like he's doing a little jig after getting a K. Jesus Luzardo, the Jesus Lizard, had these sliders on his way to 8 Ks in 5 innings. He gave up 6 runs, though. He faced Alex Wood, who had 5 Ks in 4 1/3 innings, giving up 4 runs, and had this elevated 2-seamer. Michael Wacha had 4 Ks in 6 innings, giving up no runs, showing the Red Sox why they probably should have re-signed him in the offseason. And he had this nasty changeup and 2-seamer. Jack Flaherty had these sliders on his way to 5 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings. Clayton Kershaw had 6 Ks in 3 2/3 innings, but gave up 4 runs and had 3 walks. He ran up 95 pitches in 3 2/3 innings. Not a very efficient outing for Clayton. And he had Ks on his curveball and slider. Freddie Peralta had these sliders on his way to 4 strikeouts in 6 innings. Justin Steele relied on his sliders, fastball, and got a sword on this elevated fastball, and had 6 Ks in 6 innings, giving up no runs and only 4 hits. He faced Ty Walker, who had this splitter and backdoor 2-seamer, and had 3 Ks in 5 1/3 innings, giving up no earned runs and 2 hits. Max Scherzer threw 6 scoreless innings with 5 Ks and 3 hits, and relied a lot on his curveballs and, of course, his wicked slider. In past years, I've said I really liked Scherzer's curveball, and I didn't think he threw it enough, and apparently he's starting to like it too. He faced Tanner Bybee, who had 3 Ks in 6 innings, giving up 2 runs, and had this painted fastball. Justin Verlander had 5 Ks in 8 innings, giving up 1 run, and had these fastballs, curveballs, and elevated slider. And here's an overlay of an elevated fastball and his curveball. And Verlander is one of the best at tunneling his curveball with that fastball. And this gives a hitter fits because they can look the same and end up in way different places. Verlander battled Shane Bieber, who was excellent himself, with 4 Ks in 8 innings, giving up 2 runs, got a sword on this slider. And I like this home plate view of his slider because you can see how tough it is to pick up and hit. Roansy Contreras had 3 Ks in 5 innings, giving up 3 runs and had this slider. And he faced off against Merrill Kelly, who had the sinker and cutter and 4 strikeouts in 5 innings, giving up 3 runs. Jared Schuster had 7 Ks in 6 innings, giving up only 1 hit and 1 run, and had his slider, changeup, and fastball. A really good outing for Schuster. And he battled George Kirby, who had 6 Ks in 7 innings and gave up 3 runs. And he had these overpowering fastballs. And his velo is crazy considering he only gives up 0.8 walks per 9 innings, leading the league. I gave George Kirby crap about his humble brag on his command in our interview.
I started the count off with a strike more often than, I was starting with the ball. So I think the hitters might have a little harder time with it than we may have. And we'll also expect probably a little more running too, with those disengagements.
Was that a little humble brag about I generally start off with a strike and I just have a hard time throwing balls, like I'm Mr. Command.
Yeah, I guess so.
James Caprillion had these sliders and curveballs and had 5 Ks in 5 innings, giving up 1 run. And he faced off against yesterday's most dominant starting pitcher, Framber Valdez, who threw a shutout with 7 strikeouts. He, of course, relied on his hammer curveballs and got a sword on one. And here's an overlay of his sinker and curveball, and you can see how these 2 pitches switch places on the way to the plate. And you can see why this combo is so deadly for hitters. Valdez lowered his ERA to 2.45 this year. In the marquee matchup of the day, Pablo Lopez faced off against Shohei Ohtani. Lopez had this changeup, curveballs, and sinkers, and threw 6 innings with 9 Ks, nice, and gave up only 2 runs. My filthiest starting pitcher from yesterday was Shohei Ohtani, who went 6 innings with 9 Ks, nice again, and gave up only 1 earned run and 2 hits. He, of course, relied on his blazing fastball. He had this sinker with 17 inches of run. He had his filthy sweepers and got a sword on a sweeper. And if you ever wondered how filthy Shohei's sweeper is, check out these home plate views of Shohei's sweeper. That movement is absolutely outrageous. But the biggest pitch for Shohei this game was his cutter. He had 3 Ks on his cutter, and he only had 2 Ks in his entire career before that on his cutter. After the game, Shohei said, "Well, my cutter felt good, so I just decided to throw it more." My man is constantly reinventing himself on the bump. He had 6 whiffs on his cutter this game for 60% whiff rate, and he had 6 whiffs on his fastball and 7 whiffs on his sweeper, so he really balanced his pitches really well. Here's an overlay of his cutter and sweeper, and you can see how those pitches work together. And I love this overlay of Shohei's sinker and sweeper. When you see a hitter swing at a sweeper way off the plate, now you can see why. The sinker ran back to the plate 17 inches, while that sweeper ran away from the plate 17 inches, and they were both tunneled. As a hitter, if you think you're going to get a sinker and you get a sweeper, you're going to look terrible. So for all the fans watching this game at home or from the stadium and yelling, "Why did you swing at that?" Well, this is why. Now on to my filthiest relievers. Josh Hader had this slider and fastball. Hunter Harvey had this nasty splitter and overpowering fastball. Clay Holmes had this filthy sinker. Craig Kimbrell had these heaters. Nate Pearson had this blazing 101-mile-an-hour fastball. And my filthiest reliever, yet again, was Joe Kelly for these vicious sliders. Just totally unhittable stuff. And now, my pitching ninja moment of zen.
We watched them take pictures after the game on the field. 3-2 pitch. High drive. Left field. On a hair.
And that was no cheapie either.
What What is up, everybody? My picks of the day today are three-leg parlay. I'm going to start out with Chris Bassett for 5Ks or more, then take Charlie Morton for 7Ks or more, and top it off with Luis Castillo for 8Ks or more. What would your picks of the day be?